Okay guys, today we're going to spend a bit of time working through characterization. Now I know we've done a lot of this already in our last unit last term, so some of this is going to be a bit of a recap and then the rest of it we're going to be some new stuff. So our learning intention is that you're learning about characterization so you can better understand the characters within the hate you give. Okay, and the way you're going to know you're successful is these 3 points here. Number 1, you remember different character types and can give examples from different texts. Number 2, you can explain the attributes of a complex character. And number 3, you understand the different motivations and how they relate to a person or a character's actions. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is a bit of the recap stuff from the work we did last term, but I'm just going to remind everyone what characterization is. So characterization is the process that the author uses to make a fictional character, so a character in a text, seem more realistic and more human-like, and therefore they're more believable, and usually when there's more characterization, the story is better to read. So there are 2 methods, and this should be ringing some bells. The first one is direct, and that's when the narrator tells the reader exactly what the character's traits are. So for example, he was a hairy old man. I can already picture that in my brain. I don't have to do any more thinking. That's why, and because the author's directly told me what to think. The second one is indirect, and that's when the reader has to infer the character's traits, and the way we do that is through their looks, their speech, their relationships with others, their actions and their thoughts, and we did a lot of that last term. So for example, she spent every afternoon slaving away on her paper. I would assume that she's quite dedicated, and I would assume that she's really committed to her work. And if you wanted a visual, a visual explanation of characterization, this is how I like to think about it. So on the left, you've got a character here that's quite boring and they don't seem quite human-like yet. And this would be a character that's gone through the characterization process and they appear far more human. So you can see it through here as well, and even on this one here. Okay, today's task is pretty simple. What you have here is a grid of all the different character types that you'll typically find in any text, whether that's a movie or a comic book or a fictional text like the one we're about to read. So for each one, what you have to do is read the definition, okay? Provide an example of a fictional character who fits each type. All right, so for example, if we look at protagonist, we already know that protagonist is usually the main character in the story. They're often the narrator, or the narrator follows their experiences. And see how I've given an example here? So I've said Harry Potter. So obviously for these 2, I've given you examples and you'll have to come up with your own. Then underneath each one, I want you to explain how they fit into this character type. So for example, Harry Potter, I'd say Harry Potter is a protagonist because the text is told from a limited third-person perspective and the narrator follows the experiences of Harry. So you would do that for each one of these, and it can be from any text. So you might, I don't know, chuck in Finding Nemo or something random. It doesn't really matter as long as you can prove in your dot point how they fit into this character type. One little quick reminder is that often characters can fit into many different boxes. So for example, Harry Potter, while he's the protagonist, he's also a dynamic character. And he's also a round character. So I don't want you to use the same character for all 3. I want you to try and be creative and think of some different characters for each one.